Today on the official Marvel podcast, get ready for some Marvel Studios Captain America Brave New World spoilers straight from the stars of the film, including Anthony Mackie, Tim Blake Nelson, and Giancarlo Esposito.
You'll never see me play a character like this. You've never seen me play something like this. This guy is good. This guy is an assassin.
Plus, we'll talk to the president of Marvel Comics and franchise, Dan Buckley, about the origins of the Daredevil TV series and the enduring legacy of the character.
Having the ability to convey that he's fooling the people around him, but the audience knows he can, and he does it in such a subtle way. He just nailed it in a way that we just didn't. It just was unique.
I'm Anthony Carboni.
I'm Langston Belton.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
All right, Anthony, finally, it is time to dig into Captain America Brave New World. I've been dying to talk about it. Have you seen it yet?
Of course. What did you think about the part where...
Hey. I think we need to hit the patented spoiler alarm.
Now that we gotten the spoiler warning out of the way, let's dig into some of those most exciting moments from Captain America Brave New World.
Yes, and to start, let's talk about a scene that really stuck out for Anthony Mackie, who plays Sam Wilson, aka Captain America. The limo scene, where Sam Wilson, Joaquin Torres, played by Danny Ramirez, and Isaiah Bradley, played by Carl Lumbly, are on their way to the White House.
When it came to me, Carl, and Danny, there was a lot of improv, and it was just like, the Three Little Bears. But for me, it was really important. One of the references I used for the three of us was the Ghostbusters. Like, if you watch the original Ghostbuster movies, those guys would argue, they would fight, they would joke, they would talk trash, they would do everything. But when they went on their mission, it was dead serious, and it was every man for every man. And I remember watching that as a kid, and I was like, wow, they really had each other's backs. No matter what happened, no matter if they agreed or disagreed, they really had each other's backs. So I always thought of it in that vein. I wanted people to leave those scenes and come out of them the way I felt when I came out of Ghostbusters.
And speaking of that limo scene, here's Danny Ramirez reflecting on the fun they had filming it.
Carl got jokes. And Anthony was going, yeah. And because we're actually parked for that, for when we filmed that, we were then trying to play with our eye line as though things were passing by, and it was just nonstop, just ragging on each other. It was a good time. Because every single scene, every take was fresh. So we had the outline of what we had to hit and what beats, but Julius was like, have a blast, go at it. Because at that point you start developing it feeds more of what that relationship is with how you improvise with someone. And so if there's a relationship that has tension, that improvisation is going to take form in that way, even if it's a single line or two, or if there's a lot of joy and playfulness, that's the way it's going to manifest. And so it was using improvisation in really specific moments, and Julius knew when to get a little bit of that Jackson Pollock up there.
For director Julius Ona, the Washington, D.C. chase sequence between Sam Wilson and Isaiah Bradley is what stands out for him.
It was so much fun. We did a lot of preparation, but one of the things that I love was being able to shoot in Washington, D.C., on location, going out to Pershing Park, and even just playing with certain techniques that were, again, very classical, using crash zooms and using whip pans and all sorts of things. So you had that feeling of a classic paranoid thriller, yet at the same time, it's still this very modern, fun, big MCU adventure. So, a lot of care was taken into putting together that sequence, and it all speaks to the way we were trying to lean into genre, but then also speak to Sam's humanity. He's so brave and formidable in that sequence, and he has to use his wits and his emotional ability to connect to succeed in that sequence in a way that I think is really beautiful.
Though, let's just say that Anthony Mackie remembers it a little bit differently.
I remember we ran our ass off for a day and a half. No, I remember being so annoyed. There's this one cut in the scene. Isaiah comes and jumps out of the window. I run out the window, then I have to run down the stairs. No, it's literally about 75 steps. right? And I'm like, I can't rush down the steps and break my ankle. So I have to go step by step by step by step by step by step by step. It was the most, because there's no way to look cool going down steps unless you hurt yourself. So it's like, you just have to, and he gets to jump off the balcony.
And he wasn't the only one getting in on the action. Shira Haas, who plays Ruth Botsaroff, had some heavy combat scenes throughout the film as well. Here's Shira on chasing Isaiah Bradley through the halls of the White House.
That was really the first fight sequence that we filmed. It was not in the beginning of the film, but it was like the first big fight sequence that we shot. And I think, first of all, it was incredibly fun to finally do that, and everything I've worked for physically to bring it to camera. So it was a joy to do it, and so fun, and a lot of adrenaline. And we did it a lot of time and in a row. So it was like your body, I was really in the mood. But also, regardless of the fun, which was a massive a learning process for me as an actress, to see for the first time, in my case, to see how they build such a thing, like how many, also Julius, our amazing director, how we see everything, also production, also special effects, also like so many departments working on so many small details, and this, how they structure it, and like just to see it come to life from the script to the stunt rehearsal to the actual filming of it was something that blew me away. Really, I learned a lot from that as an actress that's fascinated from a set life. So that was incredible, honestly.
Of course, we have to talk about the film's villains. And for Tim Blake Nelson, who plays Samuel Stearns, aka the leader, he finally got his long-awaited return to the MCU since his last appearance in Marvel Studios' The Incredible Hulk from 2008.
I was surprised and delighted. And after 16 years, the character, in terms of the writing and in terms of the story and how it was handled by Marvel, it's a really interesting, rich character to get to play. And it makes me really happy that I didn't go into his villainization, his transformation immediately, but that I got to do it now when I feel like I'm a better actor and the character is more interesting from the history that they've written for those 16 years.
According to Tim, the leader has a sort of Icarus complex to him, which made it all the more richer to play.
Because his zeal for knowledge and his obsession with science takes him too perilously close to the possibility of power. And I think that's an animating issue right now with AI, but it was an animating issue back then in the early 2000s with Moore's Law and everything that was happening with computers. And so I was intrigued by the truth of that inside of the character and what can happen if you fly too close to the sun. And that's certainly what happens with Stearns because he gets irradiated. And that leads to some awful temptations that he acts on. Back then, what motivated him was an agnostic obsession with knowledge. This is a guy for whom morality or any sense of a greater power out there, anything like that, none of that was going to inhibit him from getting as much knowledge as possible from solving the problem of the gamma. And then when he not only does that, but is inadvertently exposed to it, it becomes something else. His attainment of the power that's derived from being irradiated is abused by others, and therefore he is abused. And so he turns and he's more obsessed, I would say, with retribution than with the attainment of knowledge. I think he's learned that the attainment of knowledge is a very seriously perilous thing. And to use the Icarus metaphor, his feathers have been burned and he's falling to earth. And he's not happy about that. And he's going to bring pain to others as a result of that. Certainly others who he feels are responsible for what's been done to him.
And when Tim reprised his role, he had one very specific request for his character.
Well, I was always going to do this movie, but one request I had when they asked me to play the leader, come back, was that it be done practically and not digitally. I didn't want to wear the dots, not because they're uncomfortable. That's fine. I've done all that kind of stuff. But because I wanted to look in the mirror and see the guy. And I also wanted for my scene partners to see the guy. Because there's no substitute for that. There's no substitute for wearing 10 pounds of prosthetics on your head and feeling that all day and sweating inside of it and never being able for the 12 or so hours to escape consideration of what you look like and how it impacts your psychology, and also what the physical toll is of an enlarged head that just weighs more on the neck and changes the way you walk, all of that. And I really, really wanted it. And it also meant 3.5 hours in the makeup chair every day. But even that is, once you get over the tedium of it, it's a good thing, because every day, yeah, I was getting up very early and getting there before everyone else. But I was moving into the character in that process every day while they applied everything. And that also helps an actor just transform into somebody. And you can lean on that as an actor.
Meanwhile, for Giancarlo Esposito, who plays Sidewinder, he also had to embrace the physicality of his role.
And so I went down to Atlanta and I had to train in all of these arms and physical fight training for literally, I think it was 4 days. And I had to do it fast. And I had to get the feeling of it fast, how to unload, reload with my weapons, how to use an M16, how to be able to hold it properly, and how to let that lead me where I was going and feel comfortable with all that. As well as, I've got to face off with Captain America. So I've got to look and feel like I own the physicality of it, just as a snake would own his own physicality as well. And so I had to let my emotions go, because a lot of times when you're fighting physically, you make faces because you're either getting hit and it hurts, or you're hitting and it hurts, or you're winning or you're losing, or you're somewhere in between. And then using, the gunplay, you have to be proficient or look proficient. And so the Russian reload, I did that a million times and hope to do it again, because you have to practice that every day. It's taking, your ammo clip out, while your ammo clip out with one hand, flicking the right little piece to get the other clip to drop, and then put the other clip in, all without looking, all with looking at your target. So it's got to be smooth and look stealth, as a snake would. So that all played into kind of how I felt and did it.
That level of physicality was what enticed Giancarlo to this role.
You'll never see me play a character like this. You've never seen me play something like this. This guy is good. This guy is an assassin. this guy knows what he's doing. He knows where you're running to, where you're going to get to. He's figured it out beforehand, but he also is a great shooter. And so, yeah, I had to own it. And I had to slow everything down to make it fast. Slow is fast, and you just make it look smooth, and then you pick up the speed every time. And then there was a physical part of it, which is the other part of it is to do that work and not get hurt and not hurt your opponent, but to have it look and feel alive and exciting. It's a real attitude. And, to have a threatening attitude is to be precise, to control the chaos, and to not flinch, to not let anything get under your skin. I'm a hunter in this. When you see me, you realize this guy is a hunter. He's hunting his prey.
Watch the action of Captain America Brave New World for yourself. Captain America Brave New World is now playing exclusively in theaters.
Captain America Brave New World is out now in theaters, but guess what? Another one of our favorite superheroes is also returning.
That's right. Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again is coming to Disney+. Here to talk about his experience working on the original Daredevil series is president of Marvel Comics and franchise, Dan Buckley. Dan, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you doing, Langston?
I'm doing good. I want to talk to you about comics, which I'm always excited to talk about. So kind of in a broad stroke, what excites you most about Marvel Comics coming up in 2025?
Super excited about One World Under Doom. We've been waiting for this to find its way out there into the world. Been working on that for a year and a half. Ryan North's done some great work at it. We're super excited where the Ultimates line is going to. It's going to be more intrigue, more interesting stuff. We got some exciting announcements in the coming year. Spider-Man, Captain America, Fantastic Four will all have interesting relaunches with cool creative teams that people will be very excited about. And then there's some fun crossovers that we're doing that we don't do a ton of those. We've been doing a few more lately, but we got some stuff going on with Godzilla in the Marvel Universe, which, who doesn't love some good Godzilla action? And then we have Spider-Man taking on Predator real soon, which is, we've had a lot of fun with the 20th Century folks having these properties play with each other. And everyone seems really excited about what we've done so far. But having Spidey taking on Predator is going to be a bit of an interesting ride.
Yes, as a fan of a certain age, that's speaking so much to me. I don't want to date myself. But you talked about all these beloved characters. And one character I want to talk to you about, steeped in history, is Daredevil, who just celebrated his 60th anniversary. And, for you, what is it about Matt Murdock that has made him so attractive to audiences and creators for such a long period of time?
Well, everyone wants to be a hero to a certain degree, and they're heroes in their own story. Matt is the character that really recognizes that all of us are fallible, but we're constantly fighting some dark demon in us, but we can still step up and do the right thing. And I think that just speaks to writers. There's just great tension in that storytelling. The fact that his powers are very faith-based and the faith aspects of the character also speaks to a lot of people. So I just think because he's such an everyman and his superpower is so interesting, ability to see even though you're blind, there's great things to play with there. And there's a lot of metaphors that are fun with Daredevil and Matt's stories that I think writers also have a great time with. That's why you have had so many great writers have so many great runs with this character that are just kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I never saw that come before. And it allows you to explore dark places in a heroic sense.
Yeah, and I think with all that, what you said, all those stories and characterizations really lends itself to the success of Daredevil when it came to television screens 10 years ago. It's wild that it's been 10 years with Charlie Cox starring as Matt Murdock. So you were an executive producer on that series, big part of getting that show off the ground into existence. So I want to talk about the cast, two cast members specifically. Of course, how did the Marvel team land on Charlie Cox as Daredevil and John Bernthal as the Punisher in season 2?
We weren't quite sure who we were going to find. Daredevil, we were very excited about the choice for the TV platform at that time because it allowed us to find a distinctive place to tell stories that weren't occurring on television and weren't necessarily happening in the MCU yet. It was a little bit mature, a little more gritty. And so it gave us something that we felt that our fans and consumers in general would just be excited about. So when we got that going, we weren't quite sure who Matt would be. And Charlie was just on Boardwalk Empire at that time when we were looking around. And the thing that Charlie conveyed in that show that we felt that he could really do well as Matt is he was still incredibly human and gentle, but he was a hitman, and you always felt like he could kill somebody at any time. And that, Matt's a hero, but having that ability to kind of have that darkness and still have that tenderness, that he still, like, Charlie has an ability to be very inviting to people. There's kindness. Then the other piece that was really fascinating was there's something very interesting about playing Matt is the people around Matt don't know he can actually, quote unquote, see what they're doing through his other senses. So having the ability to convey that he's fooling the people around him, but the audience knows he can, and he still finds a way to convey to the audience that you're in on it. And he does it in such a subtle way, and you could pick up on it almost immediately. He just nailed it in a way that we just didn't, it just was unique. And we just saw it, and it's like, he's the guy. John, I think, was in the movie Fury. And then when we saw him, we're like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If he's available, we should go, because there's that intensity that John brings that's always there. Like, even when he's doing comedy, you feel that intensity. He has the ability to portray that he'll do anything. But there's also another piece that he conveys. There's a certain tenderness where you feel bad for Frank. And that's a really hard thing to be able to convey and still do the things that Frank does.
And now Daredevil was the first, of course, with just like the MCU, of a group of interconnected series. So what was attractive about Daredevil, not just including him in this lineup of shows, but made him the first series to premiere, that leading off with Daredevil?
Well, leading off with Daredevil, when you look at the characters that were part of that first set of shows, the Defenders characters, he was definitely the character that was the most recognizable. And he was also the character that had the most amount of story that we could adapt. Like, there's a lot of different places that we could go in there. And the creators did a great job of kind of mining the source material to figure out what would work best for our medium, being television at that time.
Yeah, and the excitement continues because now we're going to see more of Matt Murdock in Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus. So what does it feel like knowing that this character story is going to continue in a new Disney Plus series?
It speaks to the great work that the teams put together. It speaks to Charlie and the whole cast. It's a great compliment to the work that the teams did on these shows originally.
So one term you've said throughout this talk that I think is very, very important before I let you go is source material, the rich source material that Daredevil has. So with that rich legacy in comics, what can you tell us about the Daredevil Born Again Marvel Premiere Collection for those folks who now want to get into the comic side of Daredevil, maybe rather than the screen side?
First, I'll speak to you mentioned Marvel Premiere Collection. For a long, long time, ever since I started reading comics in the 80s, people would come to me and still to this day asking, where do I start if I want to read a comic? Like, where do I start? Like, what's the best way to get in? And one of the things I've really learned over the years is there's not just one way in. Depending what your interests are, what kind of storytelling you like, what kind of artwork you like, there's thousands of different ways in, and that can be overwhelming to people. So with the Marvel Premiere Collection that we're developing, we're trying to pick out those stories that have a beginning, middle, and end, have great storytellers, great artwork, speak to characters that people recognize and can identify with. So the Marvel Premiere Collection is going to be a series book clearly identifying these stories. We're kicking off with 4: Black Panther, Nation on Our Feet, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Fantastic Four Solve Everything. And walking backwards to your original question, the book that we identified as being the first book that we knew we would ship for this collection was Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller. That story truly defined the Daredevil that we know today, and everyone's kind of built off of that story that Frank Miller told. Dave Mazzucchelli's artwork in that is just beautiful. The storytelling in it is very good. The reason why we chose it is you could pick up that book, read that book. I hope you read more. but you would be satisfied with the beginning, middle, and end, and within that self-contained story. And it's a way in to say, oh, I understand why people love comics and why I want to read more and just make it easier for people to get in.
And the collection has a foreword from Charlie Cox. Dan, thank you so much for talking to us. It's so great to hear these stories about all your history with Marvel. And thank you from all the fans for all your work in getting these collections together, getting these shows together. Thank you so much, Dan. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Langston. Have a great day, man.
Langston, that conversation got me so amped. I honestly cannot wait for Daredevil Born Again to drop.
Well, you will have to wait, my friend, for March 4th. Until then, let's dig into the comic book history of our favorite lawyer / vigilante.
When Matt Murdock was just a red-haired teen growing up in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of Manhattan, he wanted to be just like his dad, single parent and third-tier pro boxer Battling Jack Murdock. But after seeing his son get into a fight with some bullies, Battling Jack feels the need to aim his son towards a safer, more respectable future.
No battling for my boy.
He makes Matt promise he'll never use violence to solve his problems and pushes the boy to get an education instead. Matt follows through and decides he wants to study law, but still secretly trains in his dad's gym at night.
Then comes the fateful day when young Matt sees an out-of-control truck careening down the street towards an unsuspecting blind man. Matt jumps into action and pushes the pedestrian to safety, but as the truck crashes, it spills its payload of radioactive chemicals, dousing the young hero. When Matt later wakes up in a hospital bed, he's lost his vision, but all his other senses have been greatly amplified. He can hear conversations blocks away. His fingertips are sensitive enough to read newsprint.
If you put one too many grains of salt in your cookie dough, he's gonna taste it, and you are not winning the bake-off.
Perhaps most importantly, Matt has developed a radar sense that gives him a physical awareness of the environment around him without the need for sight. But as cool as it may sound, having all of these senses suddenly on overdrive is incredibly disorienting, so Matt's kind of freaking out.
Until he's discovered by Stick, a martial arts master who also happens to be blind.
You'll never guess why he's called Stick.
Surprise, he fights with a stick. Anyway, Stick trains Matt not just in combat and acrobatics, but in how to control his super senses.
From here, Matt goes to State University where he meets Franklin Foggy Nelson.
The two transfer to Columbia, where Matt falls in love with fellow student Electra Nachios, the daughter of a Greek diplomat. The two engage in a passionate romance until terrorists kidnap Electra and her father. Matt bursts in to save the day. He manages to rescue Electra, but not her father, who's killed in the ensuing hail of gunfire. Devastated, Electra breaks things off with Matt and leaves the country.
To escape the memory of Electra, Matt goes to Harvard Law School, joined by Foggy.
I know, it's a lot of schools to keep track of. The guy is educated.
Meanwhile, Battling Jack is being pressured by some gangsters to throw a fight, but when Jack spots his son's face in the crowd, he just can't do it. He wins the bout and retains his honor, but also earns the wrath of the gangsters. That night, Battling Jack is murdered. Matt, who is absolutely wrecked by this, is bent on revenge, but he'd promised his father he wouldn't resort to violence, so what's a bloodthirsty young man to do?
Create a crime-fighting alter ego, so that technically it won't be Matt Murdock doing the violence, it'll be Daredevil.
Exactly. Matt stitches together a costume from his father's yellow and black boxing robes and goes on a vengeance bender, recklessly attacking and beating the heck out of the thugs who murdered his dad.
Eventually, he discovers that the men who killed his father worked for Wilson Fisk, the kingpin of crime, a man who will become Daredevil's greatest nemesis, but more on that later.
For Matt, life goes on. He gets his degree and opens a law office with his partner, Foggy Nelson. Matt and Foggy hire a young woman named Karen Page to work as a secretary for their firm, Nelson and Murdoch. Karen has a wicked crush on Matt, and after a period of will they or won't they tension, the two start dating.
Unbeknownst to everyone, of course, Matt is continuing to fight crime as Daredevil.
But in a new, much cooler red suit, which works a lot better with the whole devil theme anyway.
As Daredevil makes his name as a superhero, Matt Murdock makes a name for himself as a lawyer for superheroes, using his Daredevil connection to woo clients like the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, and Spider-Man. And though Daredevil's professional life is going well, his love life, not so much. When Matt finally does reveal his alter ego to Karen, she doesn't take it well. She can't accept the inherent danger her life would be in as the significant other of a masked vigilante. She leaves Matt and moves to California.
Daredevil then has a brief fling with the Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, but that falls apart as well.
Then, unexpectedly, Matt's first love, Elektra, comes back into his life, which sounds lovely until you learn why. She's been hired to kill him. See, after her father's death, Elektra devoted her life to becoming a ninja assassin.
The lesser-known sixth stage of grief.
She'd given herself over to the Hand, an army of emotionless killers devoted to a demonic entity known as the Beast, and spent the ensuing years training to become one of the world's deadliest assassins.
And who sicks her on Daredevil? None other than Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. Fisk runs a criminal empire that Daredevil has been going up against ever since Kingpin's goons murdered Battling Jack Murdock.
But here's the thing, Elektra doesn't know that Daredevil is her old flame Matt Murdock, and when she finally discovers the truth, she can't bring herself to go through with the assassination. Elektra and Matt have a steamy reunion, but Kingpin still wants Daredevil dead, so he sends another assassin to finish him off, Bullseye, the man who never misses. When Bullseye attacks Daredevil, Elektra comes to his aid, and in one of the darkest moments of Matt Murdock's life, Bullseye murders Elektra.
Luckily, Stick rejoins the story. Remember him?
Oh, the guy with the stick!
That's the one. Stick belongs to an organization called the Chaste, good, mystical ninjas who stand in opposition to the evil ones in the Hand. And through a combination of ninja magic and the power of Matt's love for Elektra, she is returned to the land of the living. But she decides to end her relationship with Matt and goes off to join the Chaste.
Daredevil carries on as protector of Hell's Kitchen and professional disruptor of Kingpin's dirty business dealings, occasionally dipping his red-booted toes into the larger superhero community. And Matt Murdock continues to be a superstar in the courtroom, most notably winning superheroes the legal right to testify in court under their masked identities. In one of the more unexpected episodes of Matt's life, and Marvel history in general, Wilson Fisk is elected mayor of New York. Unaware of Daredevil's secret identity, Fisk appoints headline-making attorney Matt Murdock as his deputy mayor. And when the Hand lays siege to Manhattan, Fisk is incapacitated, leading to Matt Murdock being sworn in as acting mayor.
Now, Fisk recovers and goes back to his corrupt shenanigans, but Daredevil and a slew of NYC's other heroes eventually take him down, exposing his crimes and ending his mayorship.
In another pivotal moment, Daredevil learns that a criminal he stopped from committing a random street crime died from injuries obtained during their fight. Believing that even superheroes must not be above the law, he shocks the world by showing up in court as Daredevil and pleading guilty to manslaughter.
And because superheroes have the right to keep their identities private, he is allowed to stay masked throughout his entire prison sentence.
While he's in jail, his biggest concern is that Hell's Kitchen will be unprotected, but that gets solved when Elektra volunteers to take on the Daredevil name, complete with her own snazzy take on the Red Devil costume.
It's got a scarf.
After Matt is released from prison, he and Elektra devote all their energies to ending the Hand once and for all. But the only way to truly destroy the Hand is to kill their demonic overlord, the Beast. Now, the Beast happens to reside in Hell, and as far as we know, there's only one way to get to Hell: death.
Before making the ultimate sacrifice, Matt and Elektra finally tie the knot in a lovely little ceremony officiated by Stick. Then, Matt intentionally lets himself get killed, goes to Hell, and slays the Beast.
Not the most romantic honeymoon.
No, but mourning becomes Elektra as she carries on Matt's legacy as the new Daredevil.
A few months later, a blind, red-headed amnesiac priest named Father Matt shows up in Hell's Kitchen.
3 guesses who it really is. Now that we're all caught up on what Daredevil has been up to in the comics, let's turn our attention to the actor who's returning to our screens as the masked hero next week.
His sharp suits, iconic walking stick, and snappy one-liners are something audiences can't get enough of.
And Charlie couldn't be more excited to be playing Daredevil again. Here he is sharing what he loves about starring as this beloved superhero.
I'm still pinching myself that we're here doing this still. The thing I love most about playing Matt Murdock is that I love that he doesn't care what people think. He's got absolutely no problem telling you how it is. And he tells you the truth and he lets you have the feelings around it. He's not a people pleaser. And that's really fun for me because I'm a people pleaser. I try and soften the blow of everything I say to someone because I want them to like me. You know what I mean? So I find that immensely freeing when I'm acting, Matt. That he just lets you have it straight up, and so that's fun. I like that. I like that about him. I think I could take a leaf out of his book in that regard.
Be sure to check out Charlie Cox as the always honest Matt Murdock in Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus beginning March 4th.
With Daredevil Born Again right around the corner, here's a reminder of why Daredevil is one of our most enduring superheroes. In the first season of the original Daredevil series, Matt Murdock is doing everything he can to thwart Wilson Fisk's corrupt plot to take over Hell's Kitchen. As the stakes get higher and higher, Daredevil does all he can to get more information about Fisk's plans. All of a sudden, he hears Fisk's voice on his walkie-talkie, and the enemies speak for the first time.
You're a child playing at being a hero.
No, I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just a guy that got fed up with men like you, and I decided to do something about it.
That's what makes you dangerous. It's not the mask. It's not the skills. It's your ideology. The lone man thinks he can make a difference.
Watch Marvel's Daredevil on Disney Plus now.
Next week on the official Marvel podcast, we'll hear from Vincent D'Onofrio on what it was like returning as Kingpin.
That whole thing about walking into a room and being the center of attention as the king, it's kind of fun.
And that is it for this episode. If you have not already, make sure to leave us a review wherever you're listening. It helps other Marvel fans find the show.
Yes, and be sure that you're subscribed so you never miss an episode.
This episode was hosted by Anthony Carboni and myself, Langston Belton.
Our producers are Jasmine Estrada and Anita Flores. Additional writing by Christopher Healy.
With help from Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development Brad Barton and Production Manager Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Justin Harris.
Theme music by Ida Akbal.
Executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.